September 17th. Sean is a construction worker, currently working on a bridge, dreaming of the day he can show it to his daughter. The colleagues organized a small party for Sean's pregnant wife, Martha, to celebrate their future daughter. Martha's mother, Elizabeth, helped them with securing a loan to purchase a car, which has become a necessity for the young family. Sean gave his wife a special gift, ultrasound photos of their daughter. At home, Martha hung the framed photos on the wall in the nursery. She was looking forward to the birth of the baby girl. Sean called their midwife Barbara, to tell her that Martha had gone into labor. However, plans changed. Barbara was assisting with a difficult birth and couldn't come. The soon-to-be parents weren't happy about the change in midwives, especially Martha. Sean tried to distract his wife, which worked, but only for a short while. Martha's water broke. The couple tried to stay calm, knowing they had prepared well for a home birth. Together they would get through this. Soon after the doorbell rang. It was a different midwife, Eva. By this time Martha's contractions had intensified. Eva encouraged the patient to stay calm, assuring that the nausea and pain were normal in such situations. The midwife repeated that Martha doing everything right. Sean assisted by following Eva's instructions. Using the ultrasound device, Eva listened to the baby's heartbeat. Everything seemed fine. After conducting an examination, the midwife confirmed there was no cause for concern. Sean stayed by his wife's side as she endured unbearable contractions. Eva suggested drawing a bath and placing Martha in it. Her nausea worsened. Despite the pain, Martha, with the help of the midwife and the husband, managed to stand and walk to the bathroom. It wasn't easy for her. Sean helped his wife into the bath while Eva prepared the bedroom for the baby's arrival. Martha asked the husband to turn on some music, hoping it would help distract her from the discomfort. Sean held his wife's hand. She felt awful, but the most important thing for her was that the husband was beside her. Eva remained optimistic. When the contractions grew even stronger, Martha moved to the bed. After examining her, the midwife concluded it was time for Martha to start pushing. Martha tried her best to follow all the instructions as Eva encouraged her. But when the midwife listened to the baby's heartbeat again, she grew concerned and asked Martha to turn onto her side. Sean helped his wife. However, the heartbeat didn't pick up as it should, which made Eva even more worried. If this continued, Martha would need to be taken to the hospital. Sean tried to convince his wife to go to the hospital, but Martha was determined to have the baby at home. The contractions resumed, but without success. Eva urgently asked Sean to call 911. Barely keeping his cool, he did so, explaining to the operator that the home birth wasn't going as planned. Martha still hoped she could handle it on her own. Sean did everything he could. Finally, Martha gave birth. At first, the baby girl appeared perfectly healthy. At that moment, the young parents felt like the happiest people in the world. Now Eva could breathe a sigh of relief, but it didn't last long. Noticing the baby wasn't breathing, the midwife immediately began performing resuscitation. The ambulance had already arrived. Sean, in a panic, urged the paramedics to hurry, but it was too late. October 9th. Martha finds it unbearable to see mothers with their children on the street, but she tries to hold herself together. This was not how Martha imagined her return to work. All the colleagues looked at her with sympathy. Martha takes out her frustration on others. She still hasn't recovered from the recent birth. Martha hoped that shopping would help distract her, but upon seeing a little girl in the mall, she relived the pain of losing her own daughter all over again. Martha tries to find enjoyment in everyday things. At the grocery store, the mother's friend, Judith, approached her and expresses her condolences, saying that the midwife would surely end up in jail. But those words didn't bring Martha any relief. Sean stopped by to pick up his wife and complimented her new blouse. Martha responded indifferently. Sean wanted the wife to be open with him, but Martha had no thoughts to share. The medical board was already conducting an investigation, but it wouldn't change anything. Later, the coroner told the couple that there was no definitive explanation for what had happened. Charges had already been brought against the midwife, but it wasn't certain that she was at fault. The real question was whether the tragedy could have been prevented. Sean couldn't take it anymore and left the coroner's office, but it was important for Martha to get answers. November 7th. Martha didn't like that the name on the headstone was in the Hungarian version, not the American one, as she had wanted. She announced that there would be no funeral. Sean and Elizabeth didn't know how to help Martha. Sean returned to his bad habit and started smoking again. Now Sean and Elizabeth's duty was to help Martha cope with her loss. Elizabeth intended to reach out to Martha's cousin, Suzanne, a lawyer, to figure everything out. For that, Elizabeth needed all the documentation, but Sean wanted to discuss it with his wife first. An article had already appeared online, stating that Eva faced 5 years in prison. Martha didn't like that her husband had started smoking again. Sean didn't have the strength to argue. He wanted to discuss filing a civil suit against the midwife with his wife, but Martha didn't want to hear anything about it. Sean was unbearable because of his wife's silence. Grieving for their daughter made him cry. Out of pity, Martha promised that the funeral would take place. However, despite her promise, she intended to donate the body to a university for scientific research. Elizabeth tried to dissuade the daughter, saying that Yvette should be properly buried, but Martha had already made up her mind. She signed all the necessary documents without hesitation. December 21st. Sean decided to visit Suzanne on his own. Despite the fact that she and Martha were related, the women had hardly communicated. Seeing other people's children on the bus, Martha was pained by the thought that she would never see her daughter grow up. At home, she decided to put away all of Yvette's belongings, which upset Sean. He didn't understand why his wife had become so cold towards him. Martha was irritated that her husband had teamed up with her mother. This eventually led to a conflict between the spouses. Martha didn't want to see any of Yvette's things in the house. Sean asked the wife to share her thoughts with him more often. He suggested they take a trip to Seattle. A change of scenery would be good for them, but Martha reacted without enthusiasm. Not receiving the understanding and support he needed from his wife, Sean left the house. Every day after work, he cried in helplessness. January 13th. Martha's sister's husband, Chris, promised to help Sean sell the car, but it would take time. Sean was having financial difficulties, so he asked Chris to speed things up. Martha decided to stop by a bookstore and buy a guide on seed sprouting. This became her new hobby. Anita, Martha's sister, visited her and said that their mother had aged a lot over the past 3 months and her emotional state was continuing to deteriorate. Martha didn't know this because she had stopped talking to her mother. She didn't even invite Anita into the house. Sean and Suzanne had started an affair. Suzanne believed the lawsuit against the midwife was promising since Eva hadn't called an ambulance in time, even though the baby's heartbeat had been very weak. Martha got drunk at a nightclub and kissed a random guy. Coming to her senses, she left and took a taxi. Martha was willing to do anything to stop thinking about her daughter, but Eva's case was all over the news. Relations between the spouses continued to worsen. Today Martha did not spend the night at home, which clearly did not please Sean. Martha realized that after 7 years of sobriety, her husband had returned to his old destructive habits. Sean lost his temper, calling the wife a liar. February 5th. Anita and her husband Chris visited Elizabeth. Suzanne was already there. Elizabeth had made duck for dinner. Soon Martha and Sean joined them. It was supposed to be a cozy family evening. Elizabeth smiled, trying to bring her family together. While Suzanne helped set the table, Elizabeth noticed how tired Martha looked. But she didn't care. Chris raised a toast to Sean and Martha, who had finally left the house. Maybe soon, they would be able to return to their normal lives. While the men chatted, discussing trivial matters, Martha remained silent. Unlike her husband, she couldn't act as if nothing had happened. When the conversation turned to children, Martha reacted sharply. Chris hadn't meant to offend her and quickly apologized. He truly hadn't intended anything wrong. Elizabeth announced that Suzanne was there to help them with the case against Eva. Elizabeth didn't want public judgment, so she was determined to prove that her daughter wasn't at fault. These words angered Martha. She didn't care about public opinion while her life was falling apart. Martha made it clear that she wasn't going to court. However, Elizabeth wanted justice for her granddaughter and for Eva to face the punishment she deserved. When Elizabeth accused the daughter of running away from her problems and not being able to stand up for herself, Martha couldn't take it anymore. Elizabeth insisted that they had to go through the trial to put the past behind them. Martha was too exhausted to argue. She simply left. The family dinner didn't go well. Sean didn't follow his wife. Elizabeth wrote a check. She didn't hide the fact that she had never liked Sean. He wasn't wealthy, he wasn't intellectual. For Sean, his mother-in-law's dislike for him was no secret. Elizabeth handed him a check for a considerable amount, asking him to disappear from Martha's life for good. In Elizabeth's opinion, it would be better for her daughter. Sean took the check, unsure of what to do. On the porch Suzanne approached him. His jokes made her laugh. Sean regretted not meeting Suzanne earlier. She agreed with him. As planned, Sean was going to Seattle but without Martha. She was left alone with her grief. The couple had completely stopped talking to each other. When Sean left for good with his things, Martha didn't try to stop him. Walking into the station, Sean cried. To release her emotions, Martha went for a run. Her eyes fell on the bridge her husband had built. He had been so eager to show it to their daughter. Martha didn't have the energy to cook, so she bought ready-made meals. The photos on the fridge of her and Sean once happy brought back memories, so she took them down. March 22nd. The woman found the strength to go to court. The case had drawn public attention and of course the press. Suzanne promised Martha that Eva would go to prison. The trial began. The prosecution called their first witness, Martha. Sworn to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, she explained that Eva had replaced their original midwife. Martha, being in a vulnerable position, had trusted her. Suzanne asked the victim whether she would have gone to the hospital if she had known her daughter was in danger. Martha answered yes. Then Eva's lawyer asked Martha why she had decided to give birth at home. Martha wanted the daughter to decide for herself when she would be born. The lawyer emphasized that according to Sean, his wife insisted on staying home, despite the midwife's strong recommendations to go to the hospital. Martha had to admit that this was indeed the case. Unable to hold back her tears, she requested a break and left the courtroom. At that moment, all Martha wanted was to see the pictures of her newborn daughter. Sean had managed to take a few photos before their lives changed forever within minutes. The hearing resumed. Martha asked for permission to address the court. Her request was granted, even though it went against the rules. Martha declared that she did not hold Eva responsible. Her grief had clouded her mind, but now she realized that a court ruling wouldn't bring her peace. Martha didn't want any financial compensation, because it would not resurrect her daughter. Of course, Elizabeth had hoped for a different outcome. When Martha publicly declared Eva innocent, it made her cry. At home, Martha discovered that her seeds had sprouted. Martha managed to let go of the past and rebuild her relationships with her mother and sister. After all, life goes on. April 3rd. Standing on the bridge, Martha put on Sean's hat and then scattered the daughter's ashes over the river. A year later, a little girl named Lucy, Martha's adopted daughter, climbed into an apple tree. Martha helped her down, and they went to dinner together. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.